All right. Well, welcome to let's see the September 25th Housing Committee meeting. There was the agenda was shared last week and posted. Any thoughts, comments, updates, the agenda, what we have outlined today?
Yes. Based on Matt's recent email about availability, and the fact that he's got a couple of little kids to take care of, and this is prime kid taking care of time, could we add an agenda item to revisit our standard meeting time?
Yep. Yeah, I think that'll coincide actually with the agenda item. I was just planning out meetings for the end of this year, and there are two of our meetings fall in the week of Thanksgiving and the week of Christmas. I think it's
Christmas.
actually on Christmas Day.
Oh, right, perfect.
So I think we just need to look at that in general because I don't think we're going to convince too many folks to show up on Christmas Day.
You are right about that. It could be problematic.
Okay,
All
so
right,
we'll review that.
thanks. So yes, already included, but anyway, thank you for letting me say something.
Okay, cool. All right. Approval of meeting minutes from our August 28th meeting. Any adjustments, changes needed for those minutes?
I have none. They have none for me. They look
Okay.
good to me. Accepted as written then.
Yeah, we will accept those as written. Perfect. All right. So the first order of business we had on the agenda was Jolina Court. So Keith, I don't know if you had any updates on
Yeah.
Jolina Court and where we're at.
We've had a little, yeah, and not too much on Jolina Court. There, and it kind of leads into what I was saying before about how moving things forward on that commission. It's difficult with a commission of 5 standing members that should have 7. And there are a couple commission members that have certain pet priorities that appear to slow things down, specifically with Jolina Court. We appear to have worked through that. It's taken us a year to get through that. At this point, we're getting close. I don't anticipate anything really moving forward on that until after the new year, as far as getting any public hearings to promulgate and approve at the planning commission level the revisions to the Jolina Court District. But the long and short of it is there is a cap of density of 45 units on that in that district, that actually not that district, in that parcel, which is the district, which is Buttermilk, basically. And it's a difficult thing to do when you have one dominant parcel and then one very small one, and that's it, and that's RCK. To not have this look like spot zoning. Spot zoning is a term that is utilized to describe a targeted zoning change for an individual or a parcel. But being that these 2 parcels are in a district, council is like, this shouldn't be too bad as long as you don't, really exceed your authority and push your thumb down on it, so to speak. I don't know, those aren't legal terms, but that's the way I'm categorizing it. So with that, there have been some things that we've agreed upon to increase the density in that area to get additional housing in there. We also have agreed to remove the commercial requirement for the ground floor for all buildings except the existing one. I think we're aware of that. So in order to increase any of the density, which right now for building 2 is at 31 units, to increase it to 45 or 46, we have a couple schemes that we've presented to the commission, and they appear to have mollified some of the concerns. I now have to write the administrative aspect of these schemes, and those schemes are, you can get for every 2 units of senior adaptable housing, you can get 1 unit of market rate. If you have 1 unit of truly affordable housing, and this is this kind of the sticking point administratively, you can get 2 units of market rate housing. And if you supply 5 public parking spaces, you can get 1 unit of market rate housing, all the way up to 46 for that specific building, which actually increases it to 59 or somewhere around there for the whole parcel as a whole. The big sticking point is the administrative aspect of it, especially with the truly affordable, because we're not a housing authority. And there's a lot of sensitive information that would become public, and that's an issue. And Andrew, did you have a question?
Can any of those combinations be applied,
Right.
say, using each strategy? Okay.
Yeah, you can mix and match all the way up to the ceiling there. I anticipate that any developer would bite on the senior adaptable, because there's not an income sensitivity to that. There's only you need to have that adaptability built in, and they could be sold as market rate housing regardless. You don't have to be a senior to rent those at this point. So it's kind of an avenue for an increase there, for desperately needed housing. I don't think that any developer will go for the truly affordable at this point, because it really limits them getting those commercial loans. That is something that has been beaten into us by commercial loan officers in the past, in the recent past, no less. Specifically, Wright Preston. He gave us a presentation on that. So that's kind of the long and short of it there. It's moving along, it's inching forward. We have modified a couple of the committee's concerns on that and have promulgated that to the point where we might be able to get something in January or February, get some type of approval and get a public hearing posted, and then ultimately get it to the select board.
Has
Yep, go ahead.
have any of those options, configurations, have any of those been run by the developer? Are they like
Yes.
tepid, lukewarm, opposed?
It's a no-go on it's an okay on the senior, it's a no-go on the other two for this current developer.
Okay.
But the commission knows that. They've been involved in the process up until about a couple months ago. They've kind of thrown their hands up at this point. And it's unfortunate, but it is, what it is. Yeah. So stay tuned on that, basically.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Keith, I got the 2 units of senior adaptable units brings 1 marketable unit. And then I got then there was something else that was 1 unit for 1 unit, and I couldn't.
Yeah, that
couldn't-
was,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
So for truly a senior, let me pull that up. Hang on 1 second. I don't want to spoke.
Sure.
And I
I appreciate it.
have a habit of doing that. Give me 1 second here. The best thing to do, and you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and share the screen, and we'll go to the page, and we'll work through all this.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I want to make sure I understand it and write it down correctly.
Yep. No, I get it. Me too.
I'm curious. You said there's no requirement for like an age requirement in the senior adaptability units. Is there a reason why, or is that just what everybody does, or any application behind it?
I think that the commission wanted some type of give by the developer, and that was one avenue by which we seem to have satisfied that want from commission.
Was there any talk about making it senior housing though, and saying 65 and up?
No, and typically it's 55. But yeah, there was some, or 60. Yeah, I mean, you're right, it could be 65 too. We're all getting older anyway. But no, we didn't drill down too deep into that, because we wanted really to have that adaptability more than anything. This is for people with disabilities, people that can age in place. But to have a requirement that it's 55 and older, that again is an issue for commercial lenders or lenders for developers. I'm not a developer. Andrew, you're closer to that. You have your finger on the pulse with that. I have to take what Wright has said and what CCRP has said, is that you got to make these amendments or these districts palatable for the lenders. So
Yeah, and I think the key factor there is they're allowed to be market rate. they're allowed to rent it for what they are. I only bring it up because I think I've seen way back in 2021 or 2020, we did some studies about really what's the base of what we need in the community, what's the feedback from the community, and what do we lack overall in Richmond and Chittenden County. And literally outside of affordable housing, the number 2 factor is senior housing.
Yep, I would
So
agree.
it seems like a really, really good opportunity to be like, okay, you want this increased density. Well, I've seen 100 posts in 5 years on Front Porch Forum of seniors complaining about not finding opportunity to stay in their community. So
Yeah.
just my 2 cents. I don't attend other meetings. I should, so I can put it out there, but it feels like a good chance to say there's covenants is what I've seen used.
Right.
That a lender will accept, where basically it says they don't have to be rented there, but it's kind of a first come, first serve. And if I'm a renter there at 41 years old and my opportunity to renew comes up, the landlord may have a requirement to open marketing to those that fit the age parameter they're seeking. And if there's no qualified applicants, I get to renew. But if there are qualified applicants, then they would have a supersede a right to, through covenants, to have that available unit. And being no commercial on the first floor, I don't know if they're doing parking under or parking lot.
Right.
A no step entry for a senior with like walkable Richmond, it's such a golden opportunity.
It is. And, you know, I mean, ADA is required. I mean, I understand the no step, and especially with getting into the showers and tubs and even the front door. You also have to have the width, adjustable shelf. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into that, and we haven't promulgated that yet. That's why we're not quite there. But I hear what you're saying, Andrew. I mean, I do. I'd love to see that also. That's kind of something that's near and dear to my heart. Is that senior housing and that age and place specifically, and to have that adaptability. But as it stands, we have not required an age appropriate requirement, so to speak. So here, and this is on the previous planning commission's homepage for the past meeting, which was the 18th of this month. So senior adaptable, so it's developed 2 units of senior and you get 1 additional market rate. So what that means is they have to build these units to the parameters that we have yet to promulgate, but it will be that no step, that adjustable shelves of, you know, typically on the first floor would be nice, but you obviously have to have an elevator. So, I mean, I've seen it in Queensbury, New York. We have a builder, Skirmahor Building, that does a lot of these 55-year and older. It's not exactly the greatest builder in the world, but he does provide a service. And they're pretty decent apartments. They do have that adjustable aspect to it and the no steps. So senior, it's for every 2 units of senior, you can, or / adaptable, you can get 1 unit of market rate. And for true income sensitive, 1 unit of affordable housing will get you, 4 units of additional market rate. That was the sweetener. It wasn't 2. So, that still, this developer is not going to bite on that. And the public parking, which is absolutely going nowhere, because they are not going to give up their parking. It's actually not 2. It is 2. It's 2 parking spaces will get you 1 market rate dwelling unit, but I believe we changed that to 5. We'd have to look back at the meeting minutes and everything. I'm not 100% up on that one there.
Are there any requirements for EV adaptability parking on the property for tenants?
There is. Their previous approval requires them for building 2, once that is complete, to have 10 EV parking spots. They have it roughed in right now, but they haven't installed it because it wasn't a requirement for building 1. It was a requirement for them to put up that structure that is now holding their solar panels, is my understanding, and they roughed everything in based on that. So that's that. So that is the September meeting. And
So
get particulars.
that combination of units gets them from, or that combination gets them from 0 to 46, or
Right.
that gets them from their existing approved 31 to 46.
Correct, on building two only though, not, because
Okay.
right now it's capped at 45 for the whole project. And with the removal of the commercial floor, that obviously opens up square footage for additional residential units, which is what we've been working for the last year, is to get that promulgated into the district.
Got it. Okay, so they can build 31 with no requirement, but if they want to go above that, they need to help, follow
So
some.
so the big thing is removing that commercial requirement. That's kind of huge, because right now they would have 31 units they could put on the 4 floors. That includes the basement area, which is a walkout. But quite honestly, if they're gonna kick to that, that's gonna be market rate and most likely gonna be luxury. I mean, they have to see a profit, they have to see some type of viability, but my take as your planner is that we need housing units and we'll take them at this point. Obviously, we would like more, I feel, but there are members of the commission that do not like more. The problem with the parking issue is that we have a substandard commercial entrance to Jolina Court as a result of the requirement of building 1 having to be facing Bridge Street. So that is actually a third less wide than it is required to be, and the select board waived that requirement. And that is why that access into there is really an issue. And to require, if they were to bite on those parking spaces, it really would exacerbate that intersection there. Also, we had a sidewalk project that really would have helped moving people up and down safely also, that was nixed. And, the more residential you're gonna put in there, you're gonna have to run them by the existing building, cross the street if they wanted to go up to Hatchet or to the Spruce or wherever they wanna go. If we had that sidewalk there, it would have been a lot easier. But be that as it may, that's not here. I'm always beating that drum because I can't tell you how disappointed I am in that. But we'll leave that alone. But that's it on Jolina Court. Stay tuned.
I have a question though on, so one of the part of the plan that we have as a housing committee is related to outreach, which I put my name on because I think that's something that is necessary for a community to think in different ways than as its community develops.
Oop, we lost you.
Yeah, I think we lost Connie.
That's quite the pose, though.
Community organization, I'd like to
Oh, there she is.
start. Oh, okay,
We
let me
lost
take
you.
my camera off.
We lost you for like 15 seconds there.
Okay, good,
Restarted.
sorry. Let me try that again. For outreach, which is one of the pieces of our housing plan, I'd like to be able to coordinate other community groups to be supportive of. In other words, the housing committee doesn't need to do all the outreach. We can help coordinate different groups who are interested in helping support community information about this topic. And I just wondered if there's a sort of a timetable. In other words, you have to have all your information together, and then you have to figure out who it is that you want in the community to really positively hear about this. Is this everybody, or is this, or is certain parts of the community really need to be informed and brought up to speed about this? And then what are the best ways to reach them? And what are the forums, and what are the, public pieces of notices or pieces of information and stuff like that? For that to work, though, there'd have to be kind of like a rollout plan, and I'm sure that'll come, but it doesn't sound like it exists yet. Is that right, Keith?
Are you talking specifically for Jolina Court?
Yes.
No, because it hasn't existed. I mean, statutorily, we have requirements that we have to meet, and we go above that barely with our post to the Front Porch Forum. But no, we haven't really done that at this point. I think that there's going to be a model of that with the flood hazard overlay district that's coming up too, because there was a committee specifically set up for that, Connie, to do outreach. And they're just getting going with that actual outreach. So that might be a litmus there. But as far as the rollout for that now, we just, from a planning perspective and from my administration of that, it is specifically following the statutory requirements, which is a public hearing, notice, as best you can do as far as reaching out to the public by posting in certain locations across town. Obviously, Front Porch Forum is a huge asset to the town. But other avenues, no, we're not planning on doing mailings. We're not planning on doing huge email blasts at this point. But, you know, with that said, we're open to suggestions at this, you know, to do a rollout. We should have some type of mechanism to reach the disparate amount of people that we have in the town.
Right, there, I've been at some community events and talked to folks who came, and like I'd say, oh, did you see that thing on Front Porch Forum? And the answer is, oh, nobody in my neighborhood looks at Front Porch Forum. You know, I'm the only one that does, or something like that, and people ask me, but there's some people who avidly oppose looking at Front Porch Forum. So, and you know, people are different, and so having different ways of reaching out to them is one of the things that, you know, some of the groups that I've worked with have gotten used to.
Mhm.
And so flyers and email lists and stuff like that, you know, people create those in order to reach out to the folks that to whom they know this is important. But you have to also say, so who is this important to, and who do you want to have involved? And then who do you absolutely need to have show up? And if it's all the voters in the town, then it's all the voters in the town. You said, is that true so far?
Yeah, I mean, I just think of Charlotte as an example. When I worked there, any changes that you did to the zoning regulations required a vote from the town. You know, what that does obviously is slows everybody down for a special election. But you know, here we don't have that requirement. Obviously, this is promulgated and approved by the select board. But that's really the only difference there.
So what you'd be looking for is attendance at public hearings for
Yep.
the planning commission and for the select board, and having people show up to voice their opinions about that. Is that right?
I mean, that's fine. That's what they should be doing. But at some point, we can't be the conscience or the attention span of people either, because you're never going to reach everybody. At some point, you gotta stop.
Totally true. Totally
Yeah.
true. Not asking for the perfect remedy, because that would be really tough.
Yes.
But given that the housing committee has said that this is a direction we'd like to go, or at least so far that's on the plan.
Mhm.
This is the kind of thing that I assume people would like: good attendance at hearings, and that's knowledgeable. And how do we inform people about what's taking place so that it's not a surprise when someone says, nobody ever told me about this, which is like one of those things that happens anyway, but you want to reduce that as much as possible. You said there's a process underway for, and I think you said something like hazardous flooding, something.
The flood hazard overlay district, the Three Parks Commission or committee was set up specifically for outreach. So that's their focus right now is outreach on the parks. So I mean, that could be a template for the future, or could be utilized. I mean, I've been in this position for a year and a half, and I know that Revy would put out postcards and the like, to try to get information back from constituents. And that had small amount of its success at times, depending on what it was. I mean, we're open to what you want to do. This committee obviously could be a vehicle for that outreach. But how do you want to go about that? I mean, having a table at the farmer's market is a huge way of reaching the masses also, which is something that the Three Parks Committee is considering doing.
Virginia and I have done that, and for those people who show up, it works really well. People are really interested. So I'd say yes to that, although you can't do that in the middle of the winter. So do you know who is the committee chair for the flood hazardous overlay district outreach?
Yeah, well, that would be the Three Parks Committee. And I'm not sure. It's Kendra Siski, I believe. It's on their homepage. There are two co-chairs on that.
Oh, is Denise Barnard one of them?
I don't think she's a co-chair, but I know she's on the committee.
Okay, so what's Kendra's last name again? Sorry.
Zitsky, something like that. I could pull it up for you here, show you where you can find it.
Great.
Yeah, if you're going on to the so I'll just go all the way to the homepage of Richmond. We'll get
Yeah.
there. Ah, I went too far. So once you hit that home page here,
Yeah,
go to boards and committees.
yeah,
You can go down here and Volunteers Green Browns Court Project Committee, which is 3 parks. You click on that, and there are the committee members with their emails.
I got it. Yep. Oh, Denise is a co-chair. Good.
Yes, okay. Yep.
So my question is definitely building on what other people are doing and also not overwhelming the public with too much information through the same channels at the same time. That's not a good idea. So I'll reach out to Denise and to Kendra. And we'll and that's just a a way of beginning to get started. It's not like it's a solution or anything like that. I just wanted to
Yep.
stay attuned now to the fact that outreach is one of the things that we said we were interested in doing. So thank you.
Yep.
Back to the agenda.
Great. The next thing we had on the agenda was to talk about the village residential neighborhood zoning
Right.
change updates.
So the planning commission has approved the changes, all the changes for that, and that is now before the select board, and we'll be talking about that on the 6th. Yes, the 6th of October, no, the 7th of October. That's going to have to be revised as a result of us finally getting guidance on Act 181, which is basically revisions to the Home Act to a certain extent, but that's a lot of A250 involvement. There's other things in it doing with natural resources and forest blocks and the like. But what specifically is happening, and partially the state is doing the job of the housing committee by forcing these density mandates on the town to increase the amount of units that are allowed. But the way we promulgated it, we weren't allowing duplexes to count as a single family dwelling, which is now legislatively the law. When we promulgated it, you needed to have 2/5 of an acre in order to have a duplex, but that we've got to rewrite that. And also for 3 and 4 unit dwellings, you don't have a density requirement either. And we actually did not have that to begin with, but the way we wrote it, it would be confusing because the density was basically a 1/5 of an acre per dwelling unit, which is what you could put a single family dwelling on. That's a dwelling unit, even if it has 10 bedrooms and 14 bathrooms. It's still one dwelling unit, but in this case, that's not required. You can put a 3 or 4 bedroom dwelling unit, multifamily dwelling unit, multiplex on a 1/5 of an acre. So that's a good thing. And actually our zoning allows for that right now. And but if this was to go through, we would have made it more restrictive, which is not what we want to do. So we're going to have to go back and do some revisions on that. And we'll discuss that with the select board on the 7th. But that we worked pretty hard.
You're aware that all sunsets in 2027, correct?
What's that? Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's yeah. And but that's the state mandate. If we put it into our zoning regulations, it's in perpetuity unless we change it. So and the kicker is those have to be on water and sewer also. That's an important aspect of that. Duplexes, no, but the 3 and 4 bedroom and anything above that needs to be on water and sewer. So it's focused to the town for infill development. But honestly, folks, the town is built up. There's not a lot of raw land left. There's some that are in the district, but that's Chuck Farr's land. And for the most part, there's some other parcels out there, but not large ones. We're going to have to go up. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to go up if you want to have increased density. And that's a discussion that we'll probably have when we get to the AR district, the agricultural residential district. Although it's not necessarily tied to that district, that would be the time to start planting those seeds. And we do have the town plan that needs to be updated next year and is due in 2026. So it's every 8 years. And it was done in 2018 the last time. So we'll be starting that in earnest next year and really moving forward mid-year next year. And then, we'll have tons of public hearings. And hopefully by then, Connie, to your point on outreach, we'll have some type of mechanism in place to do that. If we can build those email lists where it's just as easy as pressing a button, fantastic. I'm all for it. No doubt about that. It would be a great planning tool to get the word out. And it wouldn't just be relegated to any of these committees that are dealing with zoning or dealing with housing. It could be whatever the select board is doing also, and what, dare I say, Andrew Community Forest, they could air their dirty laundry across the whole town too, so. I hope I didn't rip any scabs open with that comment. I
No,
find
I don't think so.
semi-comical, to be honest with you.
No, but so the piece that's relevant right now is that October 7th, there's a select board meeting to review the village residential neighborhood zoning change.
That is
that
correct.
The planning commission proposes, and it's related to new guidance on Act 181, right?
Yep.
And so how that supports the infill development is like the details of that, and is something that we could all choose to attend if we're available or not, but that's what the real next step on the planning commission is regarding this topic.
That is correct. That is the next step. At that, yes. We do have a planning commission meeting on the 2nd. And we have yet to finish that agenda. But the focus is going to be on Jolina Court again. For that, hopefully we can move that forward a little bit. And I have some writing I have to do from an administrative aspect on that, which I'm drudgingly getting through. It takes a lot of research. What are the other towns doing and all that? Because this is unique. These schemes are unique to Jolina Court and only to Jolina Court. There's no other town that has this type of schemes involved, especially with parking. Heinsberg is kind of the model that I lean on how they deal with affordable housing, and their affordable housing is run through Cathedral Square or some type of affordable housing entity developer. We don't have that, and that's kind of what you guys are working towards, is to provide that information out there and be a repository for that, for lack of a better term.
You're talking Act 47, not 181, right?
It's both. It's Act 47 is what we're dealing with, but 181 has parameters that revise Act 47.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yep. And I'll forward the legislative briefings on those to you. They're a couple, 3-4 pages long on both the acts. I'm pretty sure I forwarded them previously, but they're now front and center. So instead of you having to dig for them, if in fact I did send them, I'll get them to you here in a little bit once you guys start going down your pathway of your document there. I'll work on the side and send them to you.
Okay.
That's the long and the short of it right now. I mean, we're busy, no doubt about that. But the VRNs are a success. I know they're 3 years in the making, but they stopped too. It's not like we've been working on it for 3 straight years. But I think taking those high density residential language out of the zoning district and making these new districts has worked wonders, to be honest with you. I think it's a pretty good document, if I do say so myself. But I mean, it's mostly Virginia's anyway. So
Is
Go ahead.
yeah, are the changes that are being proposed in front of the select board basically the minimum requirements as outlined in Act 181, 146? There's nothing above and beyond that would
that's correct.
be worked into that.
That's correct. And quite honestly, I don't think we could even attempt to go above and beyond what is required.
Okay.
It's currently law. I mean, you could do it now. I mean, that we issue permits for these type of structures. And that's the other thing, we're allowed to impose conditional use on duplexes and 3 and 4plexes, but we're not. Those are permitted uses. You don't have to go to the DRB for it, as long as you meet these certain parameters. We built out the section of multifamily standards, dwelling standards, and we built that out. That needs to be followed, and that's all part of these updates here.
Okay.
So obviously, if you have any questions, shoot me an email.
All right. Moving on. So, looking at our, continued work, I think the next agenda item was to continue to work on the strategy document. And I had earmarked, or in the schedule that we'll talk about later, I had broken up the strategy document to maybe talk about each section in series during one of our meetings here. So I know we touched on the section, the state and federal subsidized housing assistance programs. So we can kind of pick up some of the discussion from that section where we left off from last week or last month. So I will let me just share a screen here. What I did, however, is I reached out, well, I guess two things. I reached out to Carl Bolin, if you remember, he visited from Heinsberg, the affordable housing committee from Heinsberg, and asked him some questions. I was doing some online research around like what are some of those programs that we could potentially take advantage of or would want to talk about in this strategy document. But decided to really connect with Carl and see how Heinsberg has approached this. And basically, I'm thinking maybe from his conversation, maybe we change tactics a little bit on this section. His response, he wasn't super familiar with like the revolving loan, rental revolving loan fund. That is what Jolina Ct had brought up and asked the town or asked us to assist in putting a piece, something on the table for them in their application to get a grant for their project. And at that time, I don't think the town was really set up to be able to like offer anything or even have a discussion about it due to also the very short timeline that the Jolina Ct folks, the developer, had given us, right? I think it was like a week or 2 weeks before the application deadline when they came to the ask. So I guess long and short of it is I had a conversation with him and he offered a few suggestions maybe for us to think about. One is, how can we maybe in this document outline what are those things that the town might be willing to offer if this a developer came to us and said, hey, we're applying for this grant or we need some assistance. What can you offer us to help increase the success that we get this grant funding to make our project successful, right? And I think it sounded like in the rental revolving loan fund specifically, they were looking for, like I said, town support, right? Community support for this particular project to be successful. So how could we show that, right, in future applicants, and how could we maybe have some things, as I picture it, like some things on the shelf that are like, okay, in this situation, maybe we could pull this off the shelf and help show our support. And a couple of the things that we talked about, and I think we've talked about this in maybe correlation to the Jolina Ct, was is there like our town road crews, right? Could we offer some support in putting in sidewalks for this development or putting in some type of like infrastructure? I don't know if this flies, but that kind of an offering or are there things like something else that they're doing is they've started their housing fund. They had some grant money that they were able to get to kind of seed that fund, but what they're also doing is they have over the past couple of years asked for some budget funds, like a committee budget from the town. And I think it was like $5,000 was what the town gave to their the Affordable Housing Committee. And last year, for example, I think they used $500 of that, but they wrote into the budget to basically, instead of that money going back to the town, if it wasn't used, they could put it into a separate fund, basically, and kind of like deposit it in this fund that they could try and do that year over year. So, it was like last year was like $4,500, right? And then this next year they're gonna ask for another $5,000, and whatever they don't spend, put in like, little bits, right? It's small, but
Like a childhood allowance.
a childhood allowance, right? Exactly. Like you spend some, but you save the rest. That's a good way to put that. And then looking at something else that they were trying to do was make it so that particular fund could be set up in a way that somebody could donate to the fund and get a tax benefit from that if there was somebody in town that there was a project coming up or whatnot that they felt like they wanted to donate to, and it was, at least the mechanism was set up ahead of time. So I don't know if there's like other things that folks have heard of where a town can like put something on the table, put skin in the game, basically, for these types of projects. And is there a way that we can, again, like put those on the shelf and at least have those conversations now with folks within the community to say, is this a go, no go option, so that when the opportunity arises, we can move quicker on executing that, right? Like if the Jolina Court comes to us again, we can say, oh yeah, we've already thought about this, and we can offer this for this particular project.
And I would offer the model that the Conservation Commission has. I believe there's a half-cent tax or something that is, or there's a half a penny during, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but they have a loan fund that is funded through the town's constituency. And it's a pretty massive fund right now, and they spend certain amounts of money, and it gets released by the select board. They have to ask for it, but my understanding that it's part of your folks' taxes, your property taxes, the town tax, not the school tax.
Is it a use it or lose it?
No, it's a fund that grows and I believe gains interest too. I'm not sure how it's set up, to be honest with you, but it's been going on for about 15 years now or so. And so it's a pretty big line item.
Yeah, I think it's the concepts that I think of, Mark, are just that, because I don't know if everybody always agrees with me. Clearly, the recent vote, people didn't think the town should sink 10 mil into the town center. That's a whole nother conversation and a whole nother committee. But the opportunity that the town can have is to entice, which is kind of what Ben and Carl both talked about. That project
Yeah.
that they worked together on took 10 years because they both had to bribe each other back and forth for a long time to come to terms.
Mhm.
And if the housing committee had the ability to tap, if the town didn't want to pay for something, that would entice the right development, instead of saying you have to do this in your building and you get this. The town can be like, okay, well, you can have more units, but XYZ is going to happen and we'll contribute this to it and you're going to pay the rest. And it's kind of like a win-win, be it the sidewalks that you mentioned, Keith. Williston's masterful at this. Williston gets everything they want with every development that goes up. Builders eat it. They put in all their paths are interconnecting. They're handicap accessible. They're all lined with vegetation, and the developers are paying for that. The price of property is very high. But that's how they're kind of getting to the finish line. So I think it would be definitely a good thing to look into, where there's a fund set aside to be able to use to close a deal, really, because
Mhm.
it'll take years to accumulate the dollars you really need to pull off a project.
Right.
But it creates the funds available for a private public partnership that don't involve having a vote every single year on the town budget that could get shot down, and then there goes that opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's smart. That would be for sure what we should look at. A nonprofit holds funds, find a grant that sees it with 50K. Like he said, a quarter of a cent towards earmarked for certain projects.
So I know when we originally made the outline for the strategy document, we put like a housing fund off the table for this, but I think maybe in light of some information, maybe we had maybe super grandiose ideas at the beginning of like, hey, how are you even going to get like $500,000 in this fund? But maybe we just need to start small. Like we get $10 in there, that's $10 more than we had before, and then you find ways to like you have that mechanism in place, right? If that opportunity does come up where somebody wants to give some money because they really like what we're doing, or you know, whatever it is, or we have a grant opportunity, we can apply for that. Maybe that goes in the fund. You probably have to have some kind of project in mind to really get grant money. But
I'd have to
I-
say that,
I-
I mean, that presentation was fantastic, to be honest with you. It opened opened my eyes, and I saw one of the key aspects of what that housing committee does is to support these developers. You know, written support is important for those grants, and obviously we can pursue grants on a community basis, but you know, that support aspect is important too. And I'm sorry I stepped on you, Andrew.
Well, I would equate it just we talked about childhood allowance, but it's not that much different. And when you think of, would you ever tell your friend or family member who's 40 or 45 that hasn't started saving for retirement, don't bother, you're 45, you may as well forget it. No, you tell them to save for the future. And solving the housing crisis is not a 2 to 5 year write out your plan and check things off your list. It's a 30 to 50 year project. And somebody has got to start down here that builds the vision that other people jump onto through outreach, through fundraising.
Yep.
To create, because this housing stock, I know now, Keith, I'm thinking the ag district you're talking about is over by the mobile near the interstate, right? To raise the height.
Yeah, well, just around where there's public water and sewer, wherever there's public water and sewer. I was thinking more of Chuck Farr's land over by the highway department off of Thompson.
Okay. 'Cause eventually, right now, it doesn't make financial sense for somebody to take their 4 unit there and tear it down and start over. But eventually, that wood frame fails and they have to start over. So thinking ahead to when that's going to happen, you have these big giant, there's barns up and down Main Street. It's just wasted real estate. That's going to get converted someday. So planning that out of having nest eggs that you're putting aside, building zoning around, what does this look like in 30 years? How can we entice current property owners and future developers to see the value in it, and for those people to take advantage of it?
There's a psychological aspect to it too. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, you know, is people don't want change. You got to change that psychology also. I mean, people want this town to stay the way it is. I mean, that's just a fact. So there is
Yeah.
this psychology that we deal with in planning all the time. So, I mean, you know that in real estate, good Lord, same thing. And it can be overcome, you know, you just got to be consistent over time. Like you say, it's not going to be something that's going to happen in 5 years, but you got to lay the groundwork. Yeah.
Carl Bolin also made other kinds of suggestions that had to do with, for example, streamlining fee schedules and the whole application process, which sounds like a great suggestion, but you have to know what Richmond already has and what the opportunity for streamlining is. Keith, do you have any sense of whether this is like fertile ground that we'd be able to support some evaluation of the process for developers?
The process for housing is relatively straightforward at this point. You know, once you're above that 4-unit housing, that goes to the DRB. Anything below that is a simple administrative act. And the way to get around that would be through what's known as form-based codes, where you would write into your zoning regulations, meet these parameters, you get a permit administratively. You don't have to go through the DRB. Typically, you would go through the DRB for any commercial project, and that should be under site plan review and not conditional use. That's a whole nother issue that we don't even want to get into from an administrative point of view. You don't typically use conditional use for all your reviews. You usually use that for specific reviews. That's why it's a conditional use. not a permitted use, but regardless of that, I to answer your question, I guess to close the loop on that is we actually have a pretty straight line process for housing in the town.
Okay,
It's
There's
having
also-
to build housing.
Yeah, kind of, there's also places that are deemed like growth districts across different zip codes that kind of eliminate Act 250. If you check these boxes and do this, Winooski, you can buy a piece of land to put 90 units in, and you can literally close on it October 1st, and November 15th, you're breaking ground with every permit approved. Just like, it's shocking at how fast they move.
Yeah, that's the beauty of that form-based codes. You know, and you have a developer that you work with. There are relationships that are built over time. We saw that with Heinsberg. So yeah, I would agree. But right now we're 3 and 4 plexes are just an administrative permit at this point. You got to meet your parameters. I mean, you can't, pave the whole lot. It's got to have 50% drainage. You got to account for your stormwater and so on and so forth. But once you do that, it can go relatively quickly. And an application is only as complete as it is presented also. So a lot of times what slow things down, it's not the administrative process, it's what's presented for the administrative process. That's something we deal with on a daily basis.
okay. What about the suggestion that the housing committee, or at least Heinsberg did this, supports particular developers' plans through the process by, for example, writing support letters, showing up at meetings? Is that something that would be considered useful from a developer perspective?
I would think especially if your committee has good standing, within the community and with the DRB. I mean, we don't have a sophisticated DRB at this point. If you want to go above, but I mean, they're not bad. I mean, I've seen a lot worse, but with this one, they're not overly sophisticated, to be honest with you. And they're entrenched in the way that they do their business also. But so yes, there any support that this committee could give to developers to promote that, yeah, I mean, obviously within reason, yeah. But I mean, touching on what Andrew was saying about these districts, and I meant to say that in my update. This coming meeting that we have, I have Taylor Newton, who's the planning manager director for Chittenden County from CCRCP, coming to our meeting next Wednesday, and he's presenting what's known as a neighborhood development area designation plan that we've have been chosen to pursue potentially, but we need to get planning commission buy-in first. So that meeting is coming up next Wednesday. We currently are under a village designation, so that does help within the boundaries of that for Act 250, but this takes it to the next level. It really does. You can go a quarter mile out from that designation that we currently have. You can manipulate that map a little bit, but the first step is to get it to the planning commission to see what they think, and if they're on board with it, then we'll move forward with that. But there's a process that we have to go through, and that's the first step.
And does that process, could that process be streamlined? Is that an opportunity?
No, that's the process that's not in our control, but to get that that NDA, that neighborhood development area designation would definitely streamline the process. I mean, you have reduced fees, you have mandates on how quickly reviews need to be done, you have fast tracking for grants, but there's things that the community has to do to qualify for that. And unfortunately, one of the things that is complete streets projects need to be either in process or not. And we just lost the premier complete streets projects with the removal of the sidewalk project that was in development. But hopefully maybe that can be dusted off. I don't think all is lost, but as far as the process of getting that NDA, they handle that process. After that, if we get that designation, the process is streamlined. But to get to that process is probably going to be arduous, to be honest with you.
And the planning commission is working on that?
The planning committee, we have a presentation on Wednesday next week.
Thank you.
And Taylor's going to outline what would be needed to achieve that designation.
That's correct. Yeah, he'll get into
Okay.
the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as with everything, the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I just followed your email, Keith, on this very subject, the link to the interim Act 250 exemptions. Have you seen this map that they have on the state of Vermont website?
Yep.
It shows all different overlays of the districts that Act 47 181 applies to, and it does reflect all of those neighborhood districts that you're showing. For instance, there's one in Heinsberg, Waterbury, Moscow, Williston, Essex Junction, Burlington, Winooski, Colchester, Montpelier, Duxbury. All those towns have these designations. If you were to map us and Bolton, Huntington are the only ones that lack it really in the area. In the Jericho area. So all the little areas don't have any of that. It's a really cool map if you want to know where things lay and what type of removal of covenants, town regs, everything. It's a cool map.
Yeah, having that village designation makes us qualified to pursue this NDA. So, I mean, we have that in our back pocket, so that's a good thing. It just, takes it to the next level though, the NDAs do.
Okay. Is there anything else that, so my plan is, based on Carl's recommendation, is to talk with, I think Molly Dugan, around, are there other programs out there that, funding sources basically, that we could, prepare for, or what would that strategy look like, right, to fill out this section? But are there any other things like NDA that the town is currently pursuing or thinking about pursuing to make it easier for development in the town?
I think the NDA is really the only thing that's on the horizon right now.
Okay. And then with my same question, would Taylor be the best person to reach out to from CCRPC?
Yeah, CCRCP, yes, he's definitely a source. But I can get to the actual person though. He's the director. He does,
Okay.
he's not the nuts and bolts guy.
Okay. Yeah, if you could shoot that over to me, I think that would be helpful, and I can reach out to them as well. And then Connie, you brought up those two sections, or those two comments around, Carl's suggestion around streamlining the permitting process. Where's the share button?
Yeah, I got you all set up. You should
Yeah,
be
there it
able to
is.
share. There you go.
So if we look at our document here, right, we were talking about the funding sources, let's say, but then also down here is zoning recommendations, and I would classify, streamlining our permitting process if there's any opportunities to do so under this section. So it would probably need to be built out. And looked at from that perspective. So I think what Carl suggested is on the table. It's just a matter of like identifying for our particular town, what are those things that we could do, right? And then if you want to include kind of like in the community support and outreach, I don't know, is maybe the most relevant section is, how do we maybe support developers through the process? Like, do they come into here, into our committee? Throughout the process, like they do in Heinsberg, right? So just trying to capture some of these thoughts within this document. So that's kind of my plan, at least for my section. These are some of the notes that we took from last time. We talked about last time the NDA, Loan Fund. We talked about Habitat for Humanity, but I'm gonna hopefully try and build this out with some of those other conversations that I have coming up.
That's great, Mark. Thanks.
All right. Anything else on this piece hear any other ideas or thoughts? Like anything else that the town could offer? Offer in exchange to encourage development or encourage developers to look at our community.
Well, to really answer that question, we should talk to a couple of different developers who have experience with Richmond. And see what they suggest. I mean, that's kind of like doing a consumer market, like, how has this experience work for you? And what was easy and what was hard? That would be a good way to like test it out a little bit.
You have any?
Pandora's box there.
I'm sure, but
I've got a few that would be probably interested in sharing their 2 cents, although they have at many DRB meetings, so I don't know if they want to keep beating a dead horse.
well, we're a different horse. If we invited them to a meeting, maybe they'd have, we only need a few of them to just like begin to get a clue. I don't know that there would be a lot of different perspectives. Maybe there would be, but if we just got one or two people to come to a monthly meeting and just like, we heard from Heinsberg, that was so useful. I think if we could invite a few developers and say, we know that easier this process is for you, the more likely are we're going to be able to help the town of Richmond grow in terms of housing, and ask those questions. What is this process like for you? What's been your experience, good and bad, and what could we do differently?
When you say developers, like, are you talking somebody that builds a few homes, wants to do an 8-home neighborhood? There's not a lot of, there just hasn't been a lot of wide scale development in the last 30 years outside of like Sadler Meadow and some pocket roads here and there. So like, what would be the perfect mix of people in your perspective?
I think it should be tuned to what's possible in Richmond. Like, there's some kinds of things that we can't build. There's a limit of land, but not out beyond the, village. There are more places to develop, and Sadler Meadow was an example of that. It's close to where I live, so I got to see that go up. So, who do we think might be most interested in helping people develop property for housing, and what are the likely scenarios that would generate more housing for Richmond?
Those have done like infill development would probably be higher, on my list.
You do have a premium.
But a lot of that infill development is really just like one-offs. It's people like Matt, who was on this
Right.
committee, where they have a parcel and they're more, I don't view them as developers. I view them more as investors.
Yeah.
So they've gone through the hoops. That's why I asked that question, was like, what type of people? Because like Tammy Avanda comes to mind with Avanda Air. They had the debacle out on what is it, Williams Hill. And it was all conforming. It was just people didn't like it. So I spoke with her 9 months ago and she gave me her 2 cents. I know her pretty well. She would be somebody who would be interested. I wasn't around when Sadler Meadow went through its process. I wasn't living in the Richmond area at that time. Was there, if that was a successful project, people like living there. I'm sure there was pushback. I know there was a parcel of land near there maybe a decade ago that was under contract from some out of staters, from somebody from New York that wanted to put hundreds of units up and got shot down quickly. So the Sadler Meadow folks would be a good place. That's a really nice place to be. Great location.
Where is
I
that?
bet they wish they could have put more in there.
That's it was property on the Peat Farm, which if you go out Route 2 towards Jericho on Brown's Trace,
Jericho, yeah, Jericho Road coming from the village
Yeah.
past the middle school.
right past the
Okay.
middle school, you go under the underpass, past Southview, and then the next thing on the left is the Peat Farm, or what used to be the Peat Farm. They don't have
Yeah,
that.
Mary-
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mary
everything's
Drive.
set way far back, so there's a big open meadow still there, and all the housing's in the far back, which is somewhat common practice in these types of markets. But that parcel of land is one that's just screaming for, because of its proximity to services, is screaming for so many more units.
Yeah, it's coded as agricultural land. Anyway, but still talking to that developer, and I think I can find out who the developer was, pretty easily.
Okay.
So,
Was it
So-
Gamache or was that the builder? I think Gamache might have been the builder.
so the builder is not the same as the developer.
Well, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's multiple parties or relationships or landowners that are involved. It can get somewhat interesting. I
Mhm.
think I could find it pretty quickly while we chat.
Okay, great.
And honestly, your premier property in the town is in the Jolina Court District. I mean, that honestly, that's really where our focus has been. We're just so limited with what we have left. Honestly, I mean, that's just a fact. I'm not trying to be a naysayer. It is difficult. We also have a reputation in this town, with developers, unfortunately, as being difficult.
Godbout did Sadler Meadow.
Spell it, I didn't catch it.
G-O-D, Bout, B-O-U-T. I think it's Jeff Godbout.
Godbout, got it.
Pretty cool name.
Godbout, yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Cool. Well, I think that actually ties into the next kind of meeting schedule here, right? So we're here at the 25th. Do we want to slate in for maybe our next meeting or our November meeting, inviting in somebody? And who wants to, do we have some tentative guest and who might be able to make some connections?
Didn't we at one point say Gary Bresser had done some development in the town and that he might be a good source of information?
Yes, he's done that. I forget what the development is down Route 2 South, right?
Well, he's doing Peaceable Kingdom right now off of Thompson. Yeah, that's taking up his time, but he certainly has a wealth of information on process, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is that who owns Huntington Homes or is that somebody else?
Yeah, who is that? I can't remember his name.
I mean, they did that over there off of Kenyon
Yep.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I would doubt he did not have a fun experience with that. I'm not sure. We could always ask.
And that's why, I mean, I think that's where it'd be good to find somebody like Sadler, I mean, whatever experience they had. I don't know if they want to reopen that wound.
You can
But
say
I'd
no.
like to know why it was a bad experience. I think that'd be very helpful.
Yeah. I guess we shouldn't talk about asking Buttermilk.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. They've been run through the ringer.
Yeah, they are. All right, so.
Does somebody want to put some feelers out to try and slot somebody in for next month?
If we're talking about like people that have experience in Richmond through a multi-property development process, I have 3 or 4 folks that I could reach out to through the industry that might be interested. I can make no promises though. I can circle back in 7 to 10 days and let you know.
And can I must have missed something. Maybe you can edify what is the purpose of this? So do you need to know what the parameters are? I mean, just why are we doing this?
I think Connie's angle is outreach, more about, hey, developer, how can we help you? And what is it that you're hearing that we as non-developers, we as an arm, not necessarily obviously elected or with any influence or power, but as an arm of Richmond, we're here to help and kind of play that arbitrator in the middle.
Okay.
Because it's very contentious. The process of development, to your point, everybody's point, it's so contentious. So I think if we could be the middleman in the middle saying, hey, Tammy, tell me why it stunk. So I can take your feedback as somebody that cares about you and not play the card, but maybe change the conversation that somebody at the DRB or the planning commission has to have, because you guys got to check boxes off and be very procedural. Whereas we have a lot more flexibility and dexterity in our committee to ask questions and they can feel less threatened. I think.
You're building off what we had previously a few months ago with Heinsberg. I mean, we just.
Kind of, yeah,
Yep.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep. And, we might not learn anything new, this process is as good as it could be and we're stuck, but unless you ask, you don't really, you don't really know until you ask. So Andrew, that would be great. If you'd reach out and find out and, if that doesn't work out, I'm willing to do some other follow-up that we've been talking about, but why don't you start with your contacts?
Okay. So looking at November, it falls on the 27th, which I think is 2 days before Thanksgiving. Do we want to pull this up to November 20th? Does that work for calendars? And I don't even know what happened, if the town even has that availability, Keith, either.
I'm not sure. Let me bring up November. The 20th is a Wednesday. That'd be, that's a planning commission meeting,
Got it. Okay.
so that wouldn't work. You're probably gonna have to do it on a different, but we're remote. You could potentially do it on the 13th,
November 13th.
potentially, or we can move it to a Tuesday or maybe a suite of dates. I'm not sure. That's
We
a,
could,
Any time the week of the 25th, I'm not available that week
Yeah.
of Thanksgiving break. I'll be out of the area.
yeah, same here.
so let's pick the dates that don't work for us. And I could send out a doodle poll to everybody else, meaning Virginia and I don't know, I guess we have to think of Matt as being, but maybe Nick. And seeing if they'd be able to pick out the dates of those dates that do work for us in November and December. They can check off what works and then we could come up with a date that way. And it has to work with your calendar too, Keith.
Yeah, for availability. Yep.
Yeah,
As soon as we land on those dates, I can certainly look at what the availability is.
Okay, so should we start by looking at the week of November 11th?
Yep, the 13th works. The 12th, Mondays don't work, but the 12th, the
12th
13th, or the 14th.
I could do all of those.
I mean, the week of the 18th is not horrible either, except for the 20th.
Wait, Andrew, did those work for you? The 12th, 14th?
I don't have, yeah, it's just the week of Thanksgiving. I won't be in the area, so anything else works for me the rest of the month, really. I can make it
Okay.
work.
So 12, 13, and 14 is good, and then
The 19th and 21st works.
I'm out the 21st. I'm out 20th and the 21st. So I'll put down the 19th. So we have 4 options for November, the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 19th.
Okay.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday. Do we want to keep it at the same time? Do we want to move it any later? If we moved it later, maybe Matt would be able to participate.
I think to his email, I mean, he is on the DRB now also. I think he's stating he's getting a little overloaded with that. But there was that time frame also. I mean, we could reach out to him though, for
I
sure.
don't know if whoever's had a child, I think 5:30 to like 9:30 with 1-year-olds is like all kind of chaos. So I read it that he just was kind of indicating he's a resource for the housing committee at the DRB now, which is great to have.
Yeah. Okay.
It's difficult for me also, even though I'm here for support. I'm not a voting member. I understand that, but those 7 o'clock meetings are brutal for me. So I'm living and swimming in Richmond all day. Then I got to take 3 hours off and then get back into the pool.
Yeah.
Whereas the 5:30 is actually fantastic because I can work all the way through, and that's what I typically do on these 5:30 meetings. But don't let that hold you back, though. Don't let that hold you back. Just voice
Well,
it.
you had some family things too, Mark. Does the 5:30 time work for you?
It does, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it still works. Still works for me. I mean, I could go either way. but the 5:30 does work.
Well, I could say to the group 5:30 to 7 or 7 to, I guess that makes it 8:30. If you want me to put it out there, I will, and just see what people, Virginia and Nick and Matt say.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'll put it out there and then,
And then we have December too, which is in the same boat.
yep. Getting there next. Okay, so December. So definitely not the 25th. That just doesn't look like a good time. December week of the 9th. So like the 10th, 11th, and 12th, because Mondays don't work.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, I have no conflicts the week of the 9th or the week of the 16th.
So you're free both of those weeks. Is that right, Andrew?
Correct.
Got it. All right.
Yeah, and those should both work on those 17th, 18th, 19th.
And 7, 18, 19. Okay, so I
Yeah.
will, and those work for you, Keith?
I'm sorry, we're in December.
Yeah.
I bet you there's a planning commission though on the 11th. Is that the meeting for the planning commission? The 11th is Wednesday.
It's
It'd be
first and
the 4th or
third.
the 18th. It's the first and third Wednesday,
Oh, okay. So the 11th would work, but the 18th would not work, I guess.
correct? But I mean, the 11th and the previous month, those the second Wednesdays are DRB meetings, but we're remote, so we don't need it. We don't need the office or anything like that. So that's I'm just speaking out loud. That's all.
Okay. So are you available for all these times I'm putting down, Keith?
Yeah, I would say if it's 5:30, yeah,
Okay, if it's 7 o'clock,
that would be difficult. Yeah, it becomes a quality of life issue for me,
got it. Okay. All right. Good to know.
especially at my advanced age. So
I get it. 9 o'clock's late for me too. Not even that, like,
I'm fading at 8:30. My mind is polluted by that time.
yeah.
So,
Alrighty.
okay. So we have some dates. Connie, thank you for
Yeah.
trying to corral us and choosing finalizing a date for November and December. My original idea or thought was also to outline the other sections of the policy, or at least talk about that. So ideally, and I think Andrew, you were water, right? I think water and sewer. Like, coming prepared with some talking points, right, would be ideal. For us to maybe start like outlining what would this look like.
Did we want to bring one of the select board members that's on that committee? Wasn't there discussion of that? Isn't Bard on that or?
Yeah, I was prior to the strategic document section of the water and sewer, rather than jamming up his schedule, I was going to just connect offline, ask a few exploratory questions about process and procedure that I'm not fully well versed on. I know enough to be dangerous. And then I've called 3 or 4 times to Essex to try to connect with their water folk. And I don't get anywhere. I'm gonna have to probably attend one of their meetings, which is inconvenient. But I want a one-on-one conversation where I'm not stealing town minutes to have a dialogue with them about our needs over here, because that's not what they're there to do. So I've been trying to get them because they have a really slick process. So I was gonna do that offline, Keith, and then bring a piece of that into my presentation.
So I'm assuming if we bring in a guest, that will probably take the full most of our meeting. Do we want to move water and sewer? We had also talked about looking at the housing section of the town plan.
Well, I think what I would recommend here is, rather than stealing our whole time on that, I think I could if we're still at a 5:30 to 7 time frame, I could see if, I don't know if these folks will be able to attend. I gotta ask a favor or two on a couple of them. But ask them to attend to at 6, check in with us at 6, and 5:30 to 6. I could give you some of these water sewer
Okay.
pieces in
Yep.
the mix, because I will assure you that part of the conversation, not necessarily from Tammy, but Godbout and Huntington Homes, will revolve around water and sewer. It's just such a key component of how much it costs to build a property. and I'm sure they have plenty of ideas, something to keep your eye on. I know we're up against the fence, but there's a big dramatic clash going on in Shelburne right now about Act 47 and water and sewer. So it's about, water and sewer being on one side of the street and an ag parcel on the other side of the street, but technically, is that in a water and sewer corridor? Technically, no, but it's right there, and there's a fire hydrant on their property. So it's like 200 acres that could turn into 1,000 units or 100 and something wild, that Shelburne's fighting. So it's interesting. It plays into these conversations. I bring it up because with Act 47 overlaying everything, there's a lot of people that are reevaluating their land and wondering, okay, well, I could do this before, now I can do this.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, then let's tentatively plan on that and let us know if you're able to make contact and line somebody up for 6. If not, then we can relook at the agenda for our next meeting.
Yeah, it'll take me probably a week to get a firm
Yeah,
commitment from
that's
either.
fine. And then I think in November we're going to talk about the housing town plan, or review the housing section of the town plan, and then we'll continue with community support and zoning recommendations, with maybe being able to finalize some of these sections by February.
I like the review housing section on the town plan, because that kind of kickstarts what we're doing also.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, that's all I had. Did we talk about everything?
Yes, we did. Thank you so much. This was great.
Okay.
I will get the doodle poll out tonight. You guys won't see it because you already have told me when you're available, and I'll give it a day or two, and then we'll make a decision based on that. So Mark, I'll be back in touch with you about that. And
Okay.
thank you. Well, all right.
Alrighty. Well, I think we can call it.
All right. Done at 6:56. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Thanks for
have a
coming.
great rest of the evening.
Yep.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.